Right, and we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sport. It is a Tuesday, and it is T minus 3 days until kickoff on the 25th of August. The All Blacks taking on the Springboks down in Twickenham. Up in Twickenham, I suppose, north for both of us, technically. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the team today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the preparation for the World Cup because, I was just in the press conference right now with Ibn Edsbeth, and they talk about whether there's always one on your eye in the World Cup and how much these warm-up games mean, for example. And everyone's very quick to sort of sit there saying, no, we're focusing on the next game. We're focusing on the All Blacks on Friday. We're not worrying about the World Cup, which is a bit of a lie because everybody is. We always are. It is paper talk. You're talking to what you're supposed to say. We all know that everything's about the World Cup, and if this was the Rugby Championship deciding test in a non-World Cup year, the team we've named would not be the team we've named. Now, that's not to say they haven't picked a team which they believe can still get a result, but it's still a certain amount of this team is going to be used for a certain amount of preparation and going into the World Cup and stuff like that, which is why we're seeing a little bit of experimentation. And what I want to talk a little bit about is with regards to looking at this team and looking back at the last, how many tests have we had now? 5 tests? 5 tests we've had in the build-up to the World Cup. Are the Springboks perfectly placed in inverted commas? And that is in terms of, have they gotten the preparation right? Have we managed to rotate, change, combinations, bring people in, give players game time? Have we managed to get it right going into the World Cup ahead of this weekend? Because this is our last game, so this is a very important game. It's against the All Blacks, which is always going to be a big game, obviously. But where could things have gone better and where things have gone really well? And I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think that there is a certain amount of really good preparation, and we've rotated the squad really well to give a certain amount of people very good opportunities. But obviously, there's also been some plans that haven't quite gone to plan, and all of a sudden, we've got certain players who might be going to the World Cup that haven't played as many minutes as we'd like to. So that's basically what we'll be talking about the next hour. Get your questions into the chat down at the bottom there, and we're gonna put a poll in, and I'm gonna sit there and say, are you happy with the Springbok Rugby World Cup prep? Quick, simple yes or no. Just basically, thinking back over this year, are you feeling good going into the World Cup? And that is including results, including players we've seen, for example, the teams we've seen, all the various things. So before we sort of start diving into it, I'm going to bring the team up on screen, and then we're going to chat about it. Monsieur earlier was saying, with a recognized consistent 10, yes, we will be perfect until Monica improves conversion rate. I think we will fall a little short. Green say, looking forward to your insight. Well, very happy to have you here on the show. Welcome. Albert saying, we're looking better than the same point compared to 2019, except no Pollard. I'm going to talk about that as well, actually, that specific point. Mo says he'll laugh if Fiji beat England on Saturday. Look what happened, I suppose. Musbar said, yes, we perfectly placed a few teams like England or Wales, even France, to be in a position. Aside to how many players are hitting great form at the same time. Also a very good point, and also something I want to talk about. So I just want to bring up the team on screen here, and then we can talk about it and talk to it and decide where things have gone well, where things maybe haven't gone to sort of plan. Now, the big thing of where things haven't gone to plan is players' injuries, which is, the uncontrollables. And I'm sure everyone's had a coach or else, anybody that's watched sport for a reasonable long time will understand the concept of control the controllables. And that is basically focusing on what you can. Don't worry about the external things and things that you've got no literal control over. So that means, for example, you plan, and this is the plan, and you don't sit there going, oh, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? You do need to have certain contingencies, because injuries are always going to be a part of a problem, especially when it comes to a squad. But, you don't want to spend all your time and be so intent on focusing on what could happen that you don't focus on what's actually happening. And so with regards to that, the injuries have set us back. There's no doubt about that. No Lacanya, no Andre Pollard, no Lord Diaga has definitely changed have definitely changed the plans. Lud Diago would have been a sure starter in the side. Andre Pollard would have been a sure starter in the side. Lekanya would have been a sure starter in the side. So now we're looking at 3 out of 15 players who would be definitely within the 23, probably in the starting 15, who are not going to the World Cup as it stands. And there's no doubt about the fact that that has changed things. So, for example, Jesse Creel, who has found game time tough going in the last few years, is now going to go into the World Cup as our number one choice 13. Back to our number one choice 13 actually, and it's not new to him. He was there in 2015 and played pretty well actually. So he is a World Cup winner, so he's not new to the situation, but he has been out of favour in the last few years because he's had to play second fiddle to Lekanya. So all of a sudden he's getting a much bigger role going into the World Cup. Amani Libbok a year ago had not made his international debut, was not part of the Springboks squad. He is now going to be the number one choice at 10 for the World Cup. That is something that was not part of the plan. That is something, and you said the same, you could have planned for it. It was difficult because Alton Yankees was the number 2, and all of a sudden we know because of the off-field issues, he's dropped off, and now there's no Andre Pollard due to injury, so we've lost our 2 flower halves. And to be fair, we have been saying for a while, flower halves an issue. We've only got 2 real sort of flower halves, and the big issue that the Bok management had was that there were no other flower halves really putting their hands up. Johan Goosen had a couple of good games, and he was actually invited to preparation camps, and I think he was looked at as an option. And then the injury issues crept back in. Mornay Steyn retired, for example. And so Mike Libbok was then the next option. He put his hand up and said, no, I'm an option. You should actually be thinking about me and I can do a job. And as a result, he got called up to the end of the year tour and he got some game time. But now we've had this injury to Andre Pollard, which is not part of the plan. Jean Klein, I think, has come in at the perfect time. I think we've really, really lucked out in terms of losing a world-class lock and getting Jean Klein, who is international quality, moving across to being eligible for South Africa. I think that's been a perfect sort of timing thing. We've been really lucked out with regards to that. But all of a sudden, not even just those players, for example, I mentioned, but other players have now had elevated roles. So, for example, Kane Moody being trialed at 13 this weekend was probably not part of the plan a year ago. He was, only just into the setup, and all of a sudden they've had to now make sort of adjustments with regards to what the thinking is, what the planning is, and how we want to play and how we want to use the squad. Look at some of the comments. So Andy says we're looking good, especially where we usually dominate, which is up front with our forwards. Past weekend, the boys put in a good shift. Nathan saying, when will we hear about Owen Farrell? The hearing is today, so I'm hoping that we'll get a decision today or a verdict. Could be tomorrow, though. Albert saying, look at how we progressed from the All Blacks game in New Zealand to Wales game. We definitely improved, shaking off the rust. Friday will be a good measure point. Jay says, perfection does not exist in rugby. Boks have done enough. Trust the players you have. Boks will always be a threat to reckon with. Leandre Baer saying, I wonder if Dwayne will actually be our starting 8 when the time comes. I, for one, think he is still our best option, even if he is certainly not the Dwayne of old. HJH saying, Moody at 13 still worries me. If the All Blacks munches him, he will lose so much confidence. Funny enough, I think he's actually I think he's got such a good mentality, and I think that's what they've seen in him, that I don't think he will necessarily. I think that is what... Because the Boks management, and this is quite an interesting concept, is that they pick players, obviously, of skill sets and stuff, but there's also a certain amount of, I think, attitude and the way that they approach the game in terms of their selection. And I think that what has made them trust Moody and take the risk on Moody, I think, is his maturity. And I think that he is a player who plays with so much confidence and is happy to make mistakes and learn from the mistakes. And I think that's probably why they're willing to do this. I think if he was a confidence player, for example, you do get confidence players, and there's nothing wrong with him. But players who if they don't play well, that kind of impedes their game. I don't think he necessarily is a confidence player, which is quite a good thing if you're young, because it means that you can kind of take a bit more on the chin. But confidence players for me are players who, it's amazing how they just get better and better. And they can just get better and better, and almost sort of their threshold can be a bit higher because they're saying, well, I can do this, I can do that, and all of a sudden they start to try and believe things that they never thought they could do, and they don't even know what their ceiling is. But I think he's a player who knows exactly how good he is, and that he knows that he will make mistakes, but he will be at the level. Albert says, I don't buy anything being said about Pollard. He will definitely play in the playoffs. Mark 8 says, I remember a time when many were critical of the standard and predictable style of Bok rugby. I believe that Mike Libbok has been the key to unlock one of the most potent attacks in world rugby. Abu Dhabi Dave saying, Petty Kerr and Bosch hasn't fired nor cylinders. Yeah, I mean, one of the most talented schoolboy rugby players I've ever watched. And he's just never really yet to really sort of take that big step up as played for the Boks, but hasn't really sort of managed to kick on to become an international player. Albert saying Moody will be great no matter what position you throw him in, raw talent. Owen saying eager to see Moody at 13 and Williams at 12, another combination yet to be tested in the future. Evan says, I think we are a month or two away from being where we want form-wise. We can only hope we go into the tournament and gain momentum. What happened to Ngoma Zulu injured? I know he had an injury at one stage. I don't know if he's still injured, what his story is. They'll obviously all be in preseason at the moment. What do you think of Dwayne from playing quality so far? What two guys are going to cost us this World Cup? Mine Liebach and Jasper Visa. I think that's a bit not entirely sure that I would back that. So in terms of where I think we are with the preparation, I am very happy with the rotation we've seen. I'm very happy that I think everyone is going into the World Cup with good minutes under their belts, except for maybe, and to be fair, probably players where that hasn't been possible. I'd like to have seen Trevor Nyakane getting more minutes. I'd like to have seen him play a bit more. I thought it was weird that Thomas Toy played so much initially, so I don't know if it's a case of Trevor trying to get back into full fitness, but I would like to have seen him play a bit more. Oxenchair obviously needs more minutes, but that was an injury issue, same as Grant Williams and Jaden Hendricks. So those are probably my sort of players that I'm a bit concerned with regards to how much playing time they've had. I look at this 15, for example, and the entire starting 15, bar Siya Kolisi, have had good minutes. Siya Kolisi had a very good half last week, and I think they've really managed that injury pretty well from the looks of it. Hopefully he looks the same this weekend and kicks on just like he did. But I think, and we were initially very worried after the first 2, maybe 3 games, because certain players weren't, people were saying, oh, they're out of form. And I don't think they were ever out of form. I think it was a case of they were out of practice. I think a lot of these players taken 1 or 2 games to get back to playing at full fitness. And I'm thinking of Franco Mossa, I think, is a very good decision. Somebody was saying Franco Mossa shouldn't be going to the World Cup. I'm sitting there going, are you absolutely mental? He's been one of our best players for the last 2-3 years. Literally probably one of the top 5 best players and most consistent players. But he had an average game against New Zealand, therefore he's out of form and not going to pick him. No, he just hadn't played rugby in 3 months. And so I look at this, if I go through the 15 in terms of form, very happy with Kitsoffers, very happy with Malcolm Marx, happy with France Moherbe. Ibn Etzebeth, we'll see on Friday exactly where he is. I think we haven't seen probably the best of him just yet. He's probably somebody who we'd like to have played a bit more. He has had 2 games there and look pretty decent against Argentina, but I think this weekend will be the sort of the acid test. Franco Mossa, I thought, has been growing back into it, and I thought over the weekend he came on, and he's not known as an impact player. He is more of a kind of will play 80 minutes at the same energy. But I thought on Saturday he looked probably the best bench player of them a lot. I thought he brought a lot of energy on. He had some very nice carries. The line work was superb. And I think that he looked like the Franco Mossa of old this weekend. Siya Kolisi had 40 minutes, but looked fantastic for those 40 minutes. PSF the Toy, tell you what, we're starting to see the PSF the Toy we saw in 2019. His fitness looks really good. He's getting around the park. Looks like he's got a bit of yard to pace back as well, which is really good to see. Dwayne looks good. Dwayne looks very good. Somebody's asking about Dwayne. I'm very happy with what I've seen from Dwayne. I think that a year ago after injury, people were going, not sure about if Dwayne's going to be able to come back. He looked a little bit slow, looked a bit heavier. At the moment, he's looking fit and lean and looking very solid. I'm very happy with Dwayne. I'd be very happy for him to start a World Cup final tomorrow if we had to. Faf de Klerk has had a fantastic game the other day on defense from a defense point of view. I think obviously we need to work a little bit on the kicking game, which hopefully Friday will be another opportunity to do. But I'm pretty happy with him. Mine Liebach has been very good in open play. Needs to work on the goal kicking. There's no doubt about that. It will be interesting to see if Faf de Klerk does do any goal kicking this weekend, and whether they are looking to sort of share those duties. But Pimpy, for all that people saying he's under a lot of pressure when he played against Argentina 2 weeks ago, looked pretty good. Andre Esterhuizen, I think, has basically had his best year in a Bok jersey, and all of a sudden people are calling for him to start ahead of De Allende, which for me is a bit of a coin toss. I suppose it depends on the game plan, but I've been very happy with what Esterhuizen has shown me. Kane Moody, I mean, we can't stop talking about how phenomenal he's been this year. Kurt Lawrence is still scoring tries for fun. Damien Willems is playing some of the best rugby you've ever seen him play. And that's just the starting 15. So I look at this 23. Bongi is getting better, not still at his best. He's a player who I'd like to see a bit more from him. I think he's getting there, but I'd still like to see maybe a bit more from him, because we know what he can do, and hopefully we'll see that pretty soon. But Ox as well, we need to see more game time. Trevor as well, but Jean Klein's played really well. Okay, Sneeman looks like he's close to his best. Marco van Staden has had a really nice season for the Boks. Kobus Reinach is probably another player that I'd like to see a bit more from this Friday. And Billy Leroux is also playing some great rugby. So with that regard, I do think that we're going into this World Cup, and I think there are very few players in that 33-man squad that would cause worry. Jesse Creel, for example, everybody's panicking about Jesse Creel, one of the standouts this past weekend. So there has been a certain amount of, oh, we're worried. Oh, actually, we don't need to worry. And I think that a lot of credit needs to go to the Block coaching staff who have been willing to make changes and to rotate, and maybe at the detriment of performance, but to make sure that players are game time. And we have got a couple of injuries, which is frustrating, but that's not something you can prevent. You can't protect players at the end of the day. That's a big thing, I think, as well, is you can't protect players. You cannot say, right, Ibn Etzebeth must not play before the World Cup, because he needs to play. You've got to be able to play rugby. It's the only way you can continue your form, get yourself into form, get yourself battle hardened, for example. You've got to actually play games. And the injury risk will always be there. And it's not as simple as sitting there going, oh, well, this guy's now got injured. They should have thought about that. That's stupid, useless. That you have to play. Warm-up games are a necessary evil, unfortunately, because you have to have them. So take away sort of the injuries part of the thing, because that's just that's an anomaly or unplannable. But somebody earlier was saying we're better placed now than we were in 2019, and I would actually agree with that. I think, let's be honest, when we went into the 2019 World Cup, we were very much underdogs, weren't we? We were very much not expected to go particularly far. We lost the game against New Zealand, and everybody sort of sat there going, not convinced that that we're going to get particularly far. And people actually were pretty much we were pretty much being written off right up until we actually lifted the trophy. So, yes, in 2019, and as somebody says, we won the Rugby Championship. Yeah, we did win the Rugby Championship because we drew over in New Zealand. But I think that I do think that we've got far more depth in our system than we did back in 2019, and I do think there are far more players who are reliable going into the squad, and that we can sort of use going into this World Cup as well. So yeah, if we go back and look at 2019, for example, we beat Australia 35-17. Argentina lost to New Zealand by 4 points, 20. We then drew to New Zealand 16-16, and Australia beat Argentina. But what we are forgetting here is that Australia beat New Zealand, and then we beat Argentina. So let's not forget, yes, we won the Rugby Championship, but Australia beat New Zealand. That was a pretty big part of it, It wasn't like this year. So yeah, I think that's something that you've got to actually take into consideration. If Australia had beaten New Zealand this year, we would have won the Rugby Championship again. So in the Rugby Championship, we lost in 2019. We lost 1-2. This year we drew 1-2. This year we lost 1-2. But we beat Australia very convincingly, and it wasn't the best performance against Argentina, but we got the job done. And we then went and played against Argentina away in Argentina, and won pretty well as well with a rotated side. Whereas if you look at 2019, that game against Argentina, it was a full strength side. It was Bongi, Trevor, Tendai starting with the bomb squad. Well, it wasn't actually a 5-3 spot, but Pollard started, de Klerk started, Kwaka Smith with Pierce Death, Troy Moon. Remember, Sia Cleese was injured. But Napimpi, Colby with the wings, Delendi, Billy LaRue. So, we went over in Argentina and beat them with our full strength side. This year we rotated. We took a weaker side over to Argentina and still won. So from that regard, I do think that we are in a better position going into this World Cup. I do. I genuinely do. I do, however, think that there are more contenders this year than there were last time. I think that, in the last World Cup, Ireland weren't where they were. England were obviously a much better side than they were. But I think going into this World Cup, I think France are peaked at the right time. I think Ireland are playing incredible rugby. Scotland are a good side. So I think Australia were obviously a lot better side back in 2019. So maybe that's kind of been replaced by maybe a Scotland, for example, or even by a France and Ireland. So I think this World Cup will be a lot harder, and as a result, depth is going to be important. So yeah, I do think that in that regard, I am a bit more. I wouldn't say confident, but I'm just looking at my squad going, yeah, I'm very happy with where we are going into the World Cup. Obviously, if we get absolutely hammered on Friday, you're gonna take a step back and go, ooh, do we need to panic? But I mean, for example, if you go and win this weekend, it means that you're going into the World Cup with 5 out of 6 wins in the calendar year, and that's a very good place to be. Um, so yeah, so what are we saying here? Let me go through some of the comments earlier over here. Saying voice, I would like to see Libok at 10 and Pollard slotting in at 12. Andre said we need a kicker that will hit the poles every time. We need number 8 that can gain field every time, and Jasper cannot. But there's one thing that Jasper does do, he gets over the advantage line. So that's a bit of a weird thing to go after him for. Chesden, so Cornelius says, what about Andre Estes needs some time to shine for the box? Guys, this has been for me, and I'll be very honest here. This has been a weird chat, eh? The whole Andre Esterhuizen needs game time chat, because I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm actually bring it up. I'm gonna get the stats before I make my point. Give me 2 seconds. Right, so let's look at it's so annoying they do it by seasons. But let's look at game time, shall we? For Andre Esterhuizen versus Damien Delaney. So Andre Esterhuizen played where we at? Let's do it. No, it's not me phone to check my phone, yeah. I just want to look. I just want to list of his games. Right. Okay. So Andre Esterhuizen played 80 minutes against Australia. Oh, in fact, that's what I can do. Andre Esterhuizen. But so if we look at the two players, with regards to how much they've played the same amount of games this year. We have rotated. If there's one position that we have rotated, you know, then then that's been it. So Esterhuizen has played against Argentina, in Argentina, and played against Australia for AT. He's going to play this weekend. Damien Delaney played against New Zealand, played against Argentina, and he played against Wales. So they both had 3 games. I mean, that is the definition of rotation. So I mean, a lot of people saw him talking about the fact that we need to give Andre Esterhuizen game time. He's played 8, 240 minutes going into the of international rugby this year. That's a pretty decent amount of game time. LJ says, why are we still testing combos? Because what happens if Jesse Creel gets injured? You'll be testing combos regardless of whether. Look, I mean, so Lekanya is fit, and you've got Jesse Creel and Lekanya as your outside centers. One of them gets injured. You have to bring in an outside center into the squad. You're testing combos. There's been injuries. There's an injury at 13, therefore there's a new combination that's being tested at 13. It's not that. I don't think it's that. That's surprising. We got an injury 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, wherever it was, and all of a sudden we've got to try something new because we've had to bring somebody else into the squad. Because I was saying, I imagine it'll be much closer than the last time we played them. I'd probably say we lose by 6 or 7. I wish they gave Jaden more game time this weekend. Yeah, he is somebody I'd like to have seen play more. I'm a little bit worried about him. I think he'll play against Romania. I'm not sure he'll play against Scotland. Do you ever do analytics or do you just talk all the time? I do just talk all the time, to be honest. We are actually looking at a new show which might interest you. But yes, so my cousin's saying, interesting point about Moody picked on ability plus attitude. Always wondered why Surftain and DePrez were never picked by Rusty and Co when fit, and whether there's something along those lines. Yeah, I mean, I've heard about certain players not being involved. I've heard. Obviously, no confirmation, but I do think that does play a role. I do think that it's about getting the right combination of the people in the room, and that's not just playing ability. It is making sure everyone's willing to align, willing to work, willing to cooperate, and be within a system that they've got at the moment. You know, the last thing you need are people who don't fit the system or who, you know, become problem players and stuff like that, and it just sort of impedes on everything else. You know, there are definitely squads, and there's definitely been situations where that's been the case in the past. Chisholm says Andre is good and I'm a big fan, but just for something different, I would change things up. C says the Sapphire Star has been World Cup focused for about 8 years now. All other games are just practice. SA looking really good for this campaign. Vikesh saying, why is the block lineup named so early in the week? It gives the All Blacks more time to play against us, according to what RDCVS said a few hours ago. Well, it won't be during the World Cup, so that will change, by the way, for a start. And if you guys remember, this all stemmed back from the British and Irish Lions series, where the team was basically being leaked every day, every week, and it was correct team being leaked every time anyway. So they basically said, right, well, there's a leak in the squad, whatever it is, whoever it is, you know, so we can either let everybody... you know, the media's going to basically leak the team every single time early anyway, and it was true all the time, or we can be proactive and we can name the squad, you know, 4 days before instead of 2 days before, and say, right, well, there it is. So I mean, I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference. You know, at the end of the day, as I said, it won't be the same for the World Cup. Whether it does make a difference, whether it doesn't, who knows? Who knows? Tradition says, all the greatest athletes and sports teams in history around the World Cup have one thing in common: they will win consistently. Agreed. This team has won trophies consistently. Well, I mean, that's it. At the moment, they got a World Cup, they got a British Irish Lions, they got a Rugby Championship. We should have had a second Rugby Championship. That does burn. I think last year was a big F up, to be honest. But if they had a World Cup and 2 World Cups, British Irish Lions, and a Rugby Championship, I'm pretty happy with that. Just says Evan Lewis is a much better rounded player than Visa. Evan Lewis is not really for international rugby. He's within the system. If I was you, I'd go watch a lot. And you're gonna base that. You're basing that on URC form. So if you're gonna say that, I would recommend going and watching Jasper Visa in the Premiership, and then come back and make that chat. Bernard says Liebert needs to be sat drop from the World Cup and out of his position. Yeah, cool. Take away 4 tries over the last weekend if we did that. Brad says Box seem to draw up their squads weeks before the game. There's a sense of clarity amongst players. They do. They actually pan it all out quite a few months in advance to sort of try and make sure that everyone's getting the right sort of game time and stuff. Sean saying, oh, surprised Quacker running the water. Can't wait. Yeah, I do think that I did say yesterday that I would like to have seen him in the team. I think obviously he covers the backline position if there's an injury, as well as I think he's a better cover for around the back. So Liam saying the coach couches in the chat are crazy. Royce says, who's the back lead? He is carrying the weight of a nation at the moment, 100%, and I think we do need to get behind him. You know, at the end of the day, you know, you can hate the guy, but he has just played rugby, played good rugby, got Stormers at URC, got them into the final, and all of a sudden has now been thrown into the den, the Lions den, to carry a World Cup hope. And it's a lot of pressure on him, and we've got to back him. Danny says, thanks for answering the analytics of matches, kind of like TSA analytics for the final whistle style would be great. Well, watch this space. There are some plans for a potential new show. I can't say too much about it until we get it sorted, but hopefully something like that is on its way. Stephen, what would your match 23 be using this squad? Using this like particular 23, for example, I probably wouldn't make too many changes, to be fair. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way they've gone with it. If we were playing a quarterfinal clutch game, for example, I would start with Lulu Damien Willemse. It's probably it, actually, to be honest, in terms of making this 23 stronger. I think that's probably the only change I'd make. If that's no offense to Damien Willemse, I just do think we look more threatening, we score more tries, and we lose on the field. He's more important to our attack. Yeah, where else are we saying? Brother D says, win or lose this coming Friday, if each player brings their A game, both New Zealand and RSA teams, we will be in for a treat. Ladies and gents, hard knock rugby. Yeah, I mean, lots of people going to it. I'm very excited to see that, well, we've got a guy going for it here. Chris will be there, so we'll be bringing you guys all the coverage, hopefully from the stadium, as well as something a bit different for our pre-match build-up on Friday, which should be quite fun. Where will we be in the World Rankings if we give the All Blacks a good hiding on Friday? I'm not entirely sure, actually. I was trying to work it out yesterday. I will have a video on Friday, which will break it down. Maybe on Thursday, actually, it actually might come out. So we'll wait and see on that. But yeah, so that's pretty much the we're gonna wrap up the show here. We're bringing up the half an hour. But yeah, that's as I said, in terms of 23, I think Kane Moody is obviously the big one in terms of how he can cope. It's apart from that, I think this 23 ticks a lot of boxes. It gives game time to a Franco Master, who I think needs it. Looked good over the weekend. Let's see how it looks against New Zealand. It gives a chance to Mapimpi and Kirkley Aronson against some of the best wings in the world. I mean, you're going to see Mapimpi up against Will Jordan. That should be fantastic. It gives Siya Kolisi the best hit out you could possibly ask for. I think there's so much that we're going to get out of Friday. That's why this team excites me. The only change I would make personally is I would have had Kwagga Smith in for Marco van Staden. Marco played last weekend, for example. I think Kwagga is far more valuable as a utility player. In a 6-2 split, for example, I probably would like to have seen Jaden Hendricks getting more game time. But at the same time, you could then argue Kobus Redoff, also needs some game time. I just think Jaden needs a bit more, but I don't think Jaden is fantastic off the bench. I think he's more of a starter, and I think Faf de Klerk starting this weekend is a good idea from a defensive point of view. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Nice to see the 6-2 with two locks back in. It'll be interesting to see how that works. So we are trying things. We're definitely still trying things and getting some more information. And I think we're such a settled side, such a settled squad that we can afford to still be experimenting. I think like an Eddie Jones and Warren Gatland, they're in a situation where it's like a panic. It's a how well we've got to experiment. So we've got to try and find where we are. But at the same time, we also need momentum. What do we do? I think we've got such a settled squad that we're quite happy to say, right, well, we know exactly how we're going to play. We know exactly what we can do. So we're going to try one or two things and just sort of keep building that momentum so that we can... we're ready for sort of anything over the week. Green saying, very exciting team comment this week. Can't wait to see this outfit play on Friday. Daniel saying, decent chance Pollard will be back to kick if we can get out of the pool. Well, apparently he's fit. But again, you can't just sort of bring him in. There will have to be a legitimate injury. So... yeah. Carol says, what is Brown with the concussion situation when he is back? He played this last weekend, so he's 100%. Brad says, Liebok and Pollard are very different flyers. Pollard is like a number 12 flyer, and Liebok is like a 15 flyer half. I think Pollard's always been a bit like an inside center playing a flyer half. If you look at the way he plays the game, which is why. And they're like, oh, they're going to try him at 12. We've seen it before. We saw it Alton Pollard access, which actually worked quite nicely when we did try. But that's because Alton's the GOAT. He could make anybody operate inside center. You could go and put Trevor Carney inside center and ultimately put him into a gap. I will not stand by the fact that no fly half, I've never seen a fly half within South African rugby that can put a play into a gap like Alton Yankees was doing in his peaks. He had the knack. He had the knack. Miley Bucks, the next type of person. That's the type of fly half he is. He looks to try and see the space and stuff. I think he's a player who finds space a lot more naturally himself. I think he sort of slides through spaces. Pollard takes it to the line quite physically. Monty Liebok sort of drifts and then sees the space and he'll attack the space himself. And he's also got some great cut-out passes. But remember just that short little pop that Alton used to have. He used to have that little step, create that half a gap, and then say, right, the ball's there. And you're running onto the gap, the ball into the gap as well. It was so good to watch back in the day. But it's interesting to see how all the various different flower halves have their little intricacies, isn't it? And there's no right or wrong answer. Pollard's won a World Cup with the way he's played. We've seen attacking flower halves win the World Cup the way they've played. So it's all very interesting to see the different types of things. Boks have always won with a flower half who's defensively very solid and does the basics well. We've never actually won with a flower half who's particularly attacking natured. Thinking back of Joel Stransky back in the day. To be fair, you didn't really have flower we had these days back in the day. But Butch James, a flower half, was not an attacking weapon. He wasn't throwing ridiculous passes and short pops and stepping into stuff like that. He wasn't that type of player. Pollard's not that type of player, but defensively very solid, decent kicking game, and kind of marshal the game pretty well. And that's why I think we need to be patient with Liebok, because this is what happens when it comes to attacking flower half. You watch Finn Russell, for example. Finn Russell has taken a long time to really sort of set into consistency. He was always a player who, on his day, was absolutely world class, but could be disrupted because he will throw the 50-50 pass. And that is something that we've never given the benefit of the doubt to our players. We've never we've never given our players space to fail. You know, sometimes they do throw a 50-50 pass, sometimes it gets intercepted. Sometimes things go wrong. And that's something that we don't account for enough. You know, I mean, I watched Alton Yankees in the game have one of his best games for a block jersey. He literally tripped across. I think he had 2 try assists and was absolutely tearing it up in terms of the way he was getting players in. Was kicking really well. He kicked the ball dead, kicking for touch the one time, and everyone just absolutely hammered him in the play rate. I think he got like a 4. And it was like the most mental thing where he could have basically been man of the match. He also kicked flawlessly off the tee, but he made 1 or 2 mistakes. I think he missed the tackle and he kicked the ball dead, and all of a sudden it was a terrible match. So we don't give people the benefit of the doubt with mistakes. You know, mistakes, the good comes with the bad at the end of the day. It can't always be good. There will be bad. You know, obviously it's about how bad the bad is. You know, when you slip a tackle and they score a try, well, that's pretty bad. But you know, if it's a small thing here and there, and at the end of the day you've made up for it with different contributions, then good comes with the bad. So that is it. I will be live again tomorrow, and we'll be talking a little bit about what they've talked about in the press conferences. I'll hopefully have a little bit more about Owen Farrell, which we hopefully have a decision today about as well. So we are going to wrap it up there. Yeah, please do smash like if you are new. Please do subscribe to the channel as well, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.